The morning sun barely broke through the clouds when Nina Brooks unlocked the glass door of Sunshine Bakery. Her fingers trembled slightly from exhaustion, not cold. She had been awake since 3 in the morning, kneading dough and preparing pastries for the day ahead. The small bakery sat on a quiet corner of Maple Street, wedged between a laundromat and an empty storefront that used to be a florist. Nina flipped the closed sign to open and took a deep breath. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, mixing with the scent of cinnamon rolls cooling on the wire racks. This was her favorite moment of each day, right before customers arrived, when everything still seemed possible. She wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and glanced at the cash register. The drawer held exactly $43 and some coins. Not enough for tomorrow's supply order, not enough for rent due in 5 days. She pushed the worry aside and began arranging the display case. Croissants on the top shelf, muffins in the middle, cookies at eye level for children. Each pastry represented hours of work, recipes perfected over years, dreams baked into golden brown reality. Her mother had taught her to bake when she was 7 years old, standing on a wooden stool to reach the counter. Now, 10 years after her mother's passing, this bakery was all Nina had left of those memories. The first customer arrived at 7:15, Mrs. Peterson, who always bought 2 blueberry muffins and complained about the weather. Then came the morning rush, office workers grabbing coffee and Danish before heading to the subway. Nina worked steadily, smiling at each person, remembering their usual orders, making small talk that brightened both their days and hers. By 9:30, the rush had ended. Nina was wiping down tables when she noticed him through the window. A man stood outside looking at the bakery's display with an expression of longing. His clothes were worn and dirty, a thick gray coat too heavy for the mild September morning. His beard was unkempt, his hair messy beneath a faded baseball cap. He carried a small backpack that had seen better years. Nina recognized the look. She had seen it before on people who were hungry but had no money to buy food. Her heart squeezed with familiar empathy. She remembered the weeks after her mother died when she and her younger brother Thomas had survived on donations from their church. She remembered what hunger felt like, the way it hollowed you out from the inside. The man turned to leave, shoulders hunched. Nina made a decision. She grabbed a paper bag and filled it with fresh bread, 2 croissants, and 3 cookies. She added a cup of hot coffee with extra cream and sugar. Then she pushed open the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. "Excuse me?" she called out. The man turned slowly, his eyes wary. Nina held out the bag with a warm smile. "I made too much this morning, and these will just go to waste. Would you mind helping me out by taking them?" The man stared at her for a long moment. Up close, Nina noticed his eyes. They were deep brown, intelligent, watching her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Despite the dirty clothes and unkempt appearance, there was something dignified about the way he held himself. "I cannot accept charity," he said quietly. His voice was educated, refined even. Not what she expected. "It is not charity," Nina insisted. Gently, "I really did make too much and I hate wasting food. You would actually be doing me a favor. Please." The man's jaw worked as if chewing on words he could not say. Finally, he reached out and took the bag. His hands were clean despite his appearance, she noticed. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked. Slightly. "You have no idea what this means. Everyone needs help sometimes," Nina replied. "I am Nina, by the way." "James," he said after a brief hesitation. "James Hartford. Nice to meet you, James." Nina smiled again. "If you are ever hungry in passing, just knock. I always have something." She went back inside before he could respond, before she could see the tears that had started forming in his eyes. Through the window, she watched him walk slowly down the street, clutching the bag as if it contained something precious. Nina did not know that James Hartford was not homeless at all. She did not know he was the founder of Hartford Industries, one of the largest real estate development companies in the country. She did not know he was worth over $800 million, and she certainly did not know that for the past 6 months he had been conducting an experiment, disguising himself as a homeless person to see how people treated those they believed had nothing. In 6 months and 43 different encounters, Nina was the first person to show him genuine kindness without being asked. The first person to see him as human rather than invisible. The first person to offer help without judgment or condescension. James sat on a bench 3 blocks away and opened the bag. The bread was still warm, soft, and perfect. The coffee was exactly how he liked it, though he had not told her. The cookies smelled like his childhood, like safety and home. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something he had not felt in years. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the simple warmth of being seen. He pulled out his phone and typed a note into a private document. Nina Brooks, Sunshine Bakery, Maple Street. Gave food without hesitation, despite obvious financial struggles, genuine smile. Saw me as a person, not a problem. First real kindness in 6 months of testing. He added one more line before putting the phone away. I will return tomorrow. Back at the bakery, Nina was serving her lunch customers when Rachel Chen arrived. Rachel was her best friend from culinary school and worked part-time at the bakery 3 days a week. She took one look at the cash register and frowned. Nina, did you give away food again? Rachel asked, tying on her apron. Just some day-old items? Nina lied smoothly. She had never been good at lying, but Rachel knew her too well to be fooled. The rent is due Friday, Rachel reminded her gently, and Thomas needs money for his textbooks. I know, Nina said quietly. I will figure it out. You cannot save everyone, Rachel said. Sometimes you need to save yourself first. Nina nodded but did not respond. She knew Rachel was right. She knew she should be more practical, more focused on her own survival. But every time she saw someone in need, she remembered being that person. She remembered the kindness of strangers that had kept her and Thomas alive during the darkest time of their lives. How could she not pay that forward? The afternoon passed slowly. Business was steady but not busy enough. Nina calculated numbers in her head between customers. If she could somehow make an extra $200 by Friday, she could pay rent and have enough left for supplies. Maybe she could work a catering job or sell more bread to the corner store or skip buying groceries this week. Thomas called at 4:30. Hey, sis, his cheerful voice came through the phone. Just checking in. How is business? Good. Nina lied again. How are classes going? Great. But I need to talk to you about something. The textbook I need for engineering class costs $200. I tried finding it used, but no luck. Is there any way you could help? Nina closed her eyes. Of course, she said. I will transfer it tonight. Nina, you do not have to do that. I can wait a few weeks. Thomas, you are not waiting. Your education is the most important thing. I will handle it. After hanging up, Nina sat on the stool behind the counter and fought back tears. $400 short instead of $200. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. She did not notice James standing outside the window, watching her. He had been there for 10 minutes, observing through the glass. He saw the phone call, saw the way her shoulders slumped, saw her brush at her eyes quickly before standing up straight again. He saw the determination that replaced the despair on her face. James made another note in his phone. Supports younger brother through college. Sacrifices her own needs for others. Refuses to be defeated by circumstances. Remarkable. He walked away without going inside. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would return and begin phase 2 of his plan. He just needed to figure out what that plan was. For the first time in 6 months of testing humanity, he wanted to do more than just observe. He wanted to help. More than that, he wanted to know her. James returned the next morning at 8 o'clock. Nina was arranging fresh pastries in the display case when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up and her face broke into a genuine smile. "You came back?" she said warmly. "Please, sit anywhere you like. Can I get you some coffee?" James nodded and chose a small table by the window. He had kept the worn coat and old clothes, but this time he had washed them. He wanted to maintain the disguise, but something about Nina made him want to be cleaner, more presentable. Nina brought over a steaming cup of coffee and a plate with 2 croissants. "On the house," she said, before he could protest. "Consider it a welcome-back gift." "I cannot keep accepting free food," James said, though his hand was already reaching for the cup. "Let me work for it instead. I notice your front window needs cleaning and that shelf looks loose." Nina hesitated. She did need help around the bakery. There were a dozen small repairs she had been putting off because she could not afford a handyman, but taking advantage of someone who clearly had nothing felt wrong. "I could not ask you to do that," she said. "You are not asking. I am offering." James met her eyes. "Please, let me do something in return for your kindness." There was something in his voice, a note of genuine need that Nina recognized. She understood the importance of dignity, of being able to give something back rather than just receive. She nodded slowly. "All right. If you really want to help, I would appreciate it." Over the next 2 hours, James fixed the loose shelf, cleaned all the windows until they sparkled, and repaired a wobbly chair that Nina had been meaning to throw away. He worked with quiet efficiency, and Nina noticed his hands were skilled, confident. Not the hands of someone unfamiliar with work, but also not the hands of a regular laborer. She wondered about his story, but did not ask. Everyone had their reasons for ending up where they were. Rachel arrived at noon and immediately pulled Nina into the back kitchen. "Who is that?" she whispered urgently. "His name is James. He needed some food yesterday, so I gave him leftovers. Today he is helping with repairs." "Nina, you cannot just invite homeless people to work in your bakery." Rachel's voice was concerned, not mean. "What if he steals something or scares customers?" "He would not do that," Nina said firmly. "I can tell he is a good person. You cannot tell that just by looking at someone." Rachel crossed her arms. "You are too trusting, and you are too suspicious." Nina smiled to soften the words. "Give him a chance." "Please." Rachel sighed but nodded. "Just be careful, okay?" When Nina returned to the front, James had finished his work. The bakery looked better than it had in months. She felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you so much," she said. "This must have taken hours. Please have lunch. It is the least I can do." James accepted, and Nina brought him a sandwich and soup. As he ate, a few regular customers came in. Nina noticed them glancing at James with uncertain expressions. She made a point of chatting with him warmly, laughing at something he said. The customers relaxed, following her lead. After lunch, James stood to leave. "Can I come back tomorrow?" he asked. "Maybe help some more?" "You do not have to work for food," Nina said gently. "You can just come for food if you need it." "I know." James smiled, and Nina saw how it transformed his face. "But I want to, if that is okay." "Of course it is okay." The next day, James arrived earlier, and the day after that. Within a week, it became a routine. He would come in the morning, help Nina with whatever needed doing, share meals with her during slow periods, and talk. They talked about everything and nothing. Nina told him about learning to bake from her mother, about the struggles of keeping the bakery open, about her dreams of someday expanding or maybe opening a second location. James listened to everything, with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions, offering suggestions that were surprisingly insightful. Nina found herself looking forward to his arrival each day, found herself thinking about him in the evenings when she was home alone. "It has been 2 weeks now," Rachel said one afternoon after James had left. "You like him?" Nina felt heat rise to her cheeks. He is a friend. Nina Brooks, I have known you since culinary school. You are falling for him. Rachel's voice was gentle now, worried. Just be careful. You do not really know anything about him. I know he is kind. I know he works hard. I know he makes me laugh. Nina paused. I know he sees me. Really sees me. Not just the baker or the business owner, but me. And when he moves on, because homeless people do not usually stay in one place, what then? Nina did not have an answer for that. She had been trying not to think about it. What Rachel and Nina did not know was that James was not spending his nights on the streets. Each evening, he returned to his penthouse apartment in the city's most expensive building. He changed out of his disguise, showered, and attended business meetings via video call. He reviewed contracts, approved development projects, made decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of dollars, but his mind was always at the bakery. With Nina, his assistant, Victoria Lang, had started giving him concerned looks. "Mr. Hartford, you have been distracted lately," she said during one evening meeting. "Is everything all right with the social experiment?" "It is finished," James said abruptly. "The experiment is over." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "And your findings. People are generally unkind to those they perceive as having nothing, except for one person. One remarkable person who showed me more humanity in 5 minutes than I have experienced in 6 months. And now what? Now I do not know." James rubbed his face. "I started going back because I wanted to study her kindness, understand it. But now I just want to be there. I want to talk to her, help her, make her smile. You are getting emotionally involved." Victoria's tone was cautious. "That was not part of the plan. There is no plan anymore." James looked out his floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. Somewhere out there, Nina was probably closing the bakery, counting the day's meager earnings, worrying about bills. "I want to help her, as yourself or as James the homeless man." James did not answer. That was the problem. Every day the deception felt heavier, more wrong. But he also knew that if he revealed the truth now, Nina would feel betrayed. She had shown kindness to someone she believed had nothing. If she discovered he was a millionaire who had been testing her, playing a role, she would hate him. The next morning, James made a decision. He would continue the disguise but find ways to help the bakery anonymously. He could not tell her the truth yet, not until he figured out how to do it without losing her. But he could make her life easier. He started small. That afternoon, while Nina was in the back kitchen and Rachel was serving a customer, James left an envelope on the counter with $200 inside and a note written in disguised handwriting. "Thank you for feeding this neighborhood. From a grateful customer." Nina found it 10 minutes later. She stared at the money with wide eyes, then looked around the bakery as if the giver might still be there. James watched from across the street, hidden behind a newspaper, and saw tears stream down her face. Happy tears? She called Thomas immediately. "I can pay for your textbook," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Someone left a donation." An anonymous donation. James felt warmth spread through his chest. This was right. This was how he could help without the complication of his real identity. Over the next week, he left 3 more envelopes. He also started directing his business associates to order catering from Sunshine Bakery. Within 10 days, Nina had more orders than she could handle alone. "Business is suddenly booming," Nina told James one morning, her eyes bright with excitement. "I do not understand it, but I am not questioning it. Maybe things are finally turning around." "You deserve success," James said honestly. "You work harder than anyone I know." Nina blushed at the compliment. "Thank you for saying that. And thank you for being here. These past few weeks, having you around, it has made everything easier." Their eyes met and held. Something electric passed between them, something neither could name, but both felt. James wanted desperately to reach across the table and take her hand to tell her everything, to kiss her. But he did not. He could not. Not yet. Rachel noticed the tension between them. She pulled Nina aside during a rare, quiet moment. "You are definitely falling for him," she said. "And he is falling for you too. I can see it. Nothing can happen," Nina said sadly. "Our lives are too different. He has nothing, and I have barely more than nothing. How could we make that work? If you both care about each other, you find a way." Rachel squeezed her hand. "Just be honest with him about how you feel. Life is too short for regrets." That evening, as James was leaving, Nina walked him to the door. "James," she said softly, "I want you to know that having you here, it means a lot to me. More than just the help with the bakery. Your friendship means a lot." James felt his heart pound. "Your friendship means everything to me too," he said. "Nina, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" He looked at her face, so open and trusting, and the words died in his throat. He could not do it. Could not risk losing this, losing her. "Just that you make me want to be a better person," he finished lamely. Nina smiled, but there was something sad in it. "You are already a good person, James." Better than you know. After he left, Nina locked the bakery and walked home slowly. She did not know that James sat in his car around the corner, watching to make sure she got home safely. She did not know he was falling in love with her, and she definitely did not know that the truth about his identity was about to come crashing down in the worst possible way. The truth came crashing down on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Nina was at the bakery's counter going through supply orders when Thomas burst through the door. His face was flushed with excitement, his phone clutched in his hand. "Nina, you will not believe this," he said breathlessly. "Remember that huge donation the engineering department got last week, the one that paid for all our new equipment?" Nina looked up from her paperwork. "That is wonderful." "What about it?" "I just found out who donated it." Thomas held up his phone, showing her a news article. "James Hartford, the real estate billionaire. He donated $5 million to the university. Look at his picture." Nina glanced at the phone casually, then froze. Her blood turned to ice. Staring back at her from the screen was James. Her James, but not the worn, tired man in old clothes who fixed her shelves and drank her coffee. James wore an expensive suit, stood in front of a luxury high-rise, his beard neatly trimmed, his hair styled perfectly. The headline read, "Hartford Industries founder continues philanthropic efforts with major university donation." Nina's hands started shaking. "Thomas, show me that again." Thomas handed her the phone, his smile fading as he noticed her expression. "Nina, what is wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost." She scrolled through the article with trembling fingers. James Hartford, age 34, founder and CEO of Hartford Industries, estimated net worth $800 million. There were more pictures. James at charity galas, James cutting ribbons at building openings, James shaking hands with the mayor. Nina felt sick. She ran to the bathroom and barely made it before her stomach rebelled. Thomas followed, worried, rubbing her back as she heaved. "What is happening?" he asked. "Do you know this guy?" Nina could not speak, could not breathe. The man she had been feeding for 3 weeks, the man she had been falling in love with, was a billionaire. He had lied to her. He had pretended to be homeless, let her give him free food when he could buy her entire bakery without thinking twice. Let her worry about him, care about him, all while he was playing some kind of sick game. Rachel arrived for her shift and found Nina sitting on the bathroom floor, Thomas hovering anxiously. "What happened?" Rachel demanded. Thomas showed her the phone. "Nina knows him somehow." "This billionaire guy?" Rachel's eyes widened as she looked at the picture, then at Nina. "Oh no. Oh, Nina. No. This is James, the homeless man who has been coming here." Nina nodded miserably. "That lying piece of trash," Rachel said angrily. He was pretending this whole time. What kind of person does that? The bell above the bakery door chimed. Nina heard his voice calling, her name. James, completely unaware of what had just transpired, had arrived for his usual visit. Nina stood up, her legs shaky but her spine steel. She walked out of the bathroom and into the main bakery. James stood by the counter, smiling until he saw her face. "Nina." "What is wrong?" he started to say. "Get out," Nina said quietly. Her voice was deadly calm. "What?" James took a step toward her. "Nina, what happened?" "I said get out." Her voice rose now. "Get out of my bakery, James Hartford." The color drained from his face. He went completely still. "You know, of course I know." Nina's voice cracked. "The whole city knows. There is a news article, with your face all over it. Funny how you look so different in a $3,000 suit than you do in homeless person costume." "Nina, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Nina felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall. "Explain how you pretended to be homeless. Explain how you let me give you free food when you are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Explain how you made me care about you, worry about you, while you were lying to my face every single day." "It was not like that," James said desperately. "The kindness you showed me was real. My feelings for you are real. Your feelings." Nina laughed, bitterly. "You do not even know what real feelings are. This was all some kind of experiment for you, was it not? Some rich person game to see how the poor people live." James flinched as if she had struck him. "That is not fair." "Not fair." Nina's voice turned cold. "You want to talk about fair? I gave you food when I could barely afford to feed myself. I trusted you. I let you into my life, into my heart. And the whole time you were lying. Every word, every moment was a lie. Not every moment." James stepped closer. His eyes were desperate now. "Nina, yes, I started this as an experiment. I wanted to see how people treated someone they thought had nothing. But then I met you, and everything changed. You were the first person who saw me as human, who showed me genuine kindness. I kept coming back because I fell in love with you." "You do not love me," Nina said. "You loved the idea of me. The poor girl who was nice to you. It made you feel good about yourself. That is not true." "Then tell me," Nina demanded. "Did you leave those envelopes with money? Did you send all those catering orders?" James hesitated, and Nina had her answer. "You have been manipulating my entire life," she said quietly, "treating me like a charity case, like some project you could fix. I was trying to help. I did not ask for your help." Nina's voice broke. "I asked for honesty. I thought we were friends. I thought you cared about me. Not because I was some interesting social experiment, but because of who I am." "I do care about who you are," James said. "Everything I learned about you, your strength, your kindness, your dedication to your brother, it is all real. My feelings for those things are real. But the person I fell in love with does not exist," Nina said. "Homeless James who fixed my shelves and drank my coffee and talked to me like an equal, he was not real. You were playing a role." "I was being more myself with you than I have been with anyone in years," James insisted. "The clothes were different, but the conversations were real. The connection between us was real." Rachel stepped forward. "I think you should leave now." James ignored her, his eyes locked on Nina. "Please, give me a chance to prove my feelings are genuine. Let me show you that who I am when I am with you. That is the real me." "The real you is a billionaire who lied to me," Nina said. "The real you should go back to your penthouse and your business deals and leave me alone. Nina, please." She turned her back on him. "If you ever cared about me at all, you will leave now and not come back." She heard his footsteps, slow and heavy, walking toward the door. Heard the bell chime as he left, heard the door close. Only then did she let herself collapse into Rachel's arms, sobbing. Thomas stood nearby, awkward and angry. Want me to go punch him? He offered. Nina managed a watery laugh. No, I just want to forget he ever existed. But over the next 3 days, forgetting proved impossible. James sent flowers. Nina threw them away. He sent letters. Nina burned them, without reading. He tried calling. Nina blocked his number. On the 4th day, Thomas came to the bakery with a strange expression. Nina, there is someone here to see you. Not James, his assistant. A woman in an elegant business suit stood outside the bakery. Victoria Lang, she introduced herself. I work for James Hartford. He asked me to give you this. She held out a thick envelope. Nina did not take it. He wanted you to know that he has donated $1 million to a fund in your mother's name, Victoria said quietly. It will provide scholarships for young bakers who want to open their own businesses. He also wanted you to have this. She placed the envelope on the outdoor table. Inside was a check made out to Sunshine Bakery for $50,000. I do not want his money, Nina said. It is not charity, Victoria replied. It is payment for services rendered. You taught him something invaluable about humanity and kindness. He considers it a fair exchange. And for what it is worth, I have worked for James for 8 years. I have never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. The experiment was real, but the feelings that came from it were real too. Victoria left. Nina stared at the envelope for a long time. Thomas picked it up and looked at the check. Nina, this could save the bakery, he said gently. You could pay off all your debts, upgrade equipment, hire more staff. You could finally breathe. It feels like betrayal, Nina whispered. Accepting this after everything. Or maybe it feels like forgiveness, Thomas suggested. He made a mistake, but he is trying to make it right. And you told me once that everyone deserves a second chance. Nina thought about her mother, who had always said that love was not about being perfect, but about choosing each other even when things were hard. She thought about the conversations she had shared with James, the way he listened, the way he made her laugh. She thought about the look in his eyes when he said he loved her. Maybe the person he had been with her was real. Maybe underneath the lies about money and circumstances, the connection had been genuine. She picked up the envelope. Inside, beneath the check, was a handwritten note. Nina, I do not expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that everything I felt with you was real. You changed my life. You showed me what matters. If you decide you can give me another chance, I will spend every day proving that my love for you is genuine. If not, I will respect your decision and stay away. But please, keep the money. Not for me, but for your bakery, for your dreams. You deserve every good thing. Always, James. Nina folded the note carefully and put it in her pocket. Then tell him to come tomorrow morning, she said to Thomas. Tell him we need to talk. Really talk. No more lies, Thomas grinned. So you are giving him a second chance. Nina smiled, small but genuine. Everyone deserves kindness, even when they mess up. That is what Mama taught us. And maybe love means choosing to see the real person beneath the mistakes. The next morning, James arrived at sunrise. He wore simple clothes, not homeless disguise, but not a business suit either. Just jeans and a sweater. Just himself. Nina met him at the door. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other. I am so sorry, James said. For everything. I know, Nina replied. And we have a lot to work through. A lot of trust to rebuild. But I think we can try. If you promise no more lies, no more games, just honesty. I promise, James said. Complete honesty from now on. Nina held out her hand. Then let us start over. Hi, I am Nina Brooks. I own a bakery and I believe in second chances. James took her hand, smiling through tears. Hi, I am James Hartford. I am a billionaire who fell in love with a baker who taught him what really matters in life. Nice to meet you, James, Nina said. Now come inside. We have a lot to talk about. And you are buying breakfast this time." James laughed, and Nina found herself laughing too. It would not be easy. There would be difficult conversations ahead, moments of doubt, struggles to balance, their different worlds. But standing there in the early morning light, hands clasped, both of them felt something true and solid. Something worth fighting for. Love, after all, was not about perfect beginnings. It was about choosing to keep going even when the path got complicated. And Nina and James were both ready to walk that path together.